valuable insights and experience, inspiring us to think big and work towards our goals.
Batson-Cook Construction has been a trusted name in the construction industry since 1915. With over 100 years of experience,
अपने क्या क्या पढ़ लिया हम लोग?
Batson-Cook Construction has been a trusted name in the construction industry since 1915. With over 100 years of experience, the company has delivered major projects across the southeastern United States in sectors like healthcare, education, hospitality, commercial, and residential. Headquartered in Georgia, Batson-Cook brings together strong local knowledge and industrial standards. The company is known for its commitment to quality work, long-term client relationships, and efficient project delivery. Batson-Cook uses modern technologies like BIM and lean construction to deliver successful projects. The company works closely with clients, communities, and partners to build spaces that support long-term growth and positive impact, making it a reliable and respected name in the construction field. Now, we invite onto the stage Senior Vice President and General Manager, Batson-Cook, Mr. Neha Dugal ma'am, Principal Advisor in many big construction firms like Thermax Limited, CQRA Private Limited, Mr. K.K. Taparia sir, Vice Chancellor, Dr. Mrs. Sushma S. Kulkarni ma'am, Professor and Dean Career Services, International Affairs and Alumni Relations, Dr. Jonathan Koner sir, Senior Associate Professor, Head Industry Talks, Dr. Avinash Purandare sir. We request the gathering to welcome our dignitaries with a round of applause. We invite Dr. Mrs. Sushma S. Kulkarni ma'am to felicitate our esteemed guest, Mrs. Neha Dugal ma'am. Now we invite Dr. Jonathan Koner sir to honor our esteemed guest, Mr. K.K. Taparia sir. We kindly request the dignitaries to come forward for a group photograph. That was for the felicitation. We kindly request the dignitaries to take their seats on the stage.
Ms. Neha Dugal ma'am is seasoned construction industry leader with over 24 years of experience in driving growth, innovation, and operational excellence. With a background spanning across multiple industries, she has developed a unique skill set in project management, strategic planning, and business development. As a senior vice president and general manager at Batson-Cook Texas, LLC, she leads operation at Dallas office, overseeing all aspects of project delivery, from pre-construction planning and financial management to subcontractor relationships and client engagement. She joined Batson-Cook 12 years ago as a project manager at the Atlanta office, where she successfully managed large-scale multifamily projects. After transitioning to healthcare, she became senior project manager for Northside Hospital projects, overseeing its successful delivery. In 2018, she relocated to Dallas and opened Batson-Cook's first Texas office. Quickly growing the business in new market, under her leadership, the office has seen significant growth, and her ability to build high-performing teams and forge strong client relationships being pivotal to division success. In 2023, she was promoted to general manager after 5 years of exceptional growth and financial stewardship. Her journey at Batson-Cook has not only honed her technical skills, but has also shaped her leadership style, fostering growth mindset and focus on delivering excellence at every level. Now, without further ado, we honored to invite Ms. Neha Dugal ma'am to share her inspiring journey with us. We also request the dignitaries to take their seats in the front row.
Check. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, perfect. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good? All right. Who's excited to see me? Put your hands up. All right. I'm kind of excited. This is a big crowd. Thank you for having me today. So I'm going to talk to you about two things today. That was a really nice introduction, but I'm going to talk to you about my journey in construction. And then I'll talk to you about what I've been doing to run a construction company. I want this session to be interactive, so ask me questions. My front benchers here, I'm going to ask you all questions. So hopefully you're talking to me. Is that okay? All right, super. So this is a little bit about me. I'm from Pune. I went here, not unfortunately to NICMAR, but I went to MIT, did my undergrad, and then decided I wanted to do my master's, so I went to Stanford for construction management. I've got two girls, 10 and 13. They are extremely slay and pretty cool. Been in the construction industry for almost 20 years. Like playing tennis. Maybe some of y'all play pickleball. Maybe, okay. And then I'll talk to you about how I sort of fell in love with construction. So your path from NICMAR might look like mine, and it may not. So maybe a show of hands, how many of you want to start your own construction company? What about in the back? Anyone wants to start their own construction company? Okay, some hands. So mine started at the age of 22. I wanted to be the CEO of a construction company. That was the goal, and I didn't really have a timeline. You know, I didn't know if it was going to take me 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20, maybe 25. And this is where I started. So right out of grad school, I was a project engineer, right? I think you all call them project coordinator here, right? Same sort of title. A few years later, became an assistant project manager. And this is where, as an assistant project manager, you're out on site, you're the life and blood of the project, right? You're getting all the information, you're helping build the project. You spend most of your time on site. You're learning how to build. And then became a project manager. This is where I spent most of the time back in the office. This is where I'm writing contracts, dealing with issues, dealing with money. How do we get paid? How do we find the next client and the next client? As I started progressing, then became a senior project manager. Now this is where I had project engineers under me, project managers, and then you're sort of managing many sites, if you will. Many teams. From there, sort of the biggest jump, became a business unit manager. This is where you're running your own P&L account. I had never done that. You're managing your own finances. You're figuring out, okay, you're going to pay rent. You're going to pay people. You're going to do pre-construction. You're going to lose some bids. And then hopefully you'll win some, right? And then you manage the whole account, manage the whole universe. Quarter after quarter, you're learning new things, right? You're figuring out what works, what doesn't. And then a few years later, same thing, but maybe with a bigger team, as a senior vice president, general manager. So my first project was in Boston, Massachusetts. It was a new terminal for Delta Airlines. And back then, this is about 20 years ago. So project was about $500 million. These days, it'll be about $2 million, right? So pretty large project. We had 60 people out on site. This was in East Boston, okay? And we had about like 10 engineers. So I remember showing up at my job site the first day. I really didn't know. I showed up in flip-flops, right? Because I didn't know, like, how do you get to site, right? And then my superintendent looked at me and he said, what are you wearing, right? I said, I'm ready. And he said, no, you got to wear boots. You're going to wear the right PPE, right? This is how I showed up. Anyways, for the next 2 weeks, my job was to take RFIs, cut them out, and paste them on the back of drawings. Right? And I'm telling myself, really, did I go to Stanford for that? I'm like, okay, we'll get through this. Right? So I spent about 2 weeks doing that. Does everyone know what an RFI is? I can't hear you. Request for information, right? When do you ask an RFI? When you need something, right? When it's not clear on the drawings. Because sometimes the drawings don't have everything. So it's a big job. We had maybe 1,000 RFIs, right? So I'm reading every RFI, then I'm finding the page number, then I'm cutting it out, pasting it on the back. And as I do this, I spend 8 hours every day, right? And I spend the first 2 weeks doing it. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make lemonade out of this, right? So I start reading all of the questions. And then some of the questions I don't understand. So what do? Go to Google. Right? And I'm looking up the answers. I'm going to one of my managers and saying, okay, help me with this because I don't really understand, right? And he took the time and he would like, okay, this is what an expansion joint is. And we're building probably one of the largest, greenest, airport back then, right? And so did that for 2 weeks. And then there's like 10 other engineers just like me, right? So what do you think my goal was? To be the best engineer, right? To make sure that I'm better than the other 9 engineers there, right? So we're sitting in a meeting, we're sitting in like, a team meeting, right? And the project manager says, hey, we had this RFI yesterday, who knows about that? So who do you think puts their hand up? Me, right? I'm like, wait, pick me, I know that. So I tell him the RFI number, I tell him all the information, and suddenly they're like, what's your name again? Like, my name's Neha, and I did all of this. So suddenly, I became a known entity, right? So when they have meetings, when they have client meetings, suddenly they would say, Neha, come in, help us with this. You know this issue. And then I started getting more and more pulled into maybe some of the bigger meetings that I wouldn't have access to. So why do you think I'm telling you this? Because at some point, you're going to go from here, you're going to start your first job, and it doesn't matter what you do, right? You might be cutting paper, posting RFIs. But figure out the good from it, and then that'll hopefully help you as you move along. So as we sit together in team meetings, one of the other things is they would ask, hey, who wants to put this cost proposal together, right? And I'd be like, I'll do it. So I was always the person who was putting my hand up, asking for extra work, staying late, but then also making sure that I knew my project better than anybody else. And then that helped as the team finished building the project. I was one of the last few on that project, helping that team out. So always be the most, I would say, hardworking person in the room, right? My parents are. So anyways. So from there, I had a chance to build a high-rise project, right, which is probably everyone's favorite, right? You love seeing concrete go up. You see big high-rise projects go up. Now, this one was pretty complicated. It was in the heart of Boston. We had the Omni Hotel behind us. We had a jeweler's building right next to us. So I had to make sure that you're not making a lot of noise and vibration. We went 8 stories down and 30 stories up. So one of the hardest things is probably in construction not going up, but going down, right? Because you got to figure out if you're going down, and I think you can see some of the pictures up there. Right? We went down about 90 feet, and we're hitting clayey soil. So you want to make sure that the earth is not collapsing on you, right? So learned a lot about underground and deep foundations, temporary shoring. So you can see in that picture, you're going 90 feet down, and you're holding the earth back with these veilers. And as soon as the construction is done, you take them out, and then you're going 30 stories up. One of the coolest things, right, and I remember this about the project. So I was an assistant project manager, which is I got to be a part of the project from start to finish, pretty much see everything from the ground up. So I remember the first concrete pour that they had. And then the metric system here might be different, but it was about 700 yards. And it was the most beautiful thing. Right? We started pouring concrete at 7 a.m., and every 10 minutes, there would be a concrete truck that showed up. Right? And at the end of the day, you had the whole slab poured. And then we did it 38 times. But one of the most interesting things was we only had one tower crane. Right? So if you're pouring concrete during the day, everything else stops, because it all revolves around the structure and the concrete. So if you look at this rendering, this building had precast panels, and they weren't like just regular precast panels, right? They're trying to match sort of like the Boston old-timey look, if you will, right? So these were terracotta panels that were made in Germany. They were cast as panels, and then they showed up, and they were like 5 feet wide by like 20 feet tall. So how do you think you install these panels? What do you need? Tower crane, right? So what do? Do you pour concrete, or do you put panels up? What do you think? That's a good question, right? You don't really know. So if you don't pour concrete, how are you going to put the panels up? So one of the things we decided to do is that, and then you do a lot of night work here, right? Is that we're going to pour concrete during the day, and then we're going to install panels at night. So pretty much the job never shut down. You guys see these videos on LinkedIn where like you can build a hospital in China in 10 days? Have you all seen that? It just goes on 24/7, right? That's what it felt like, which was amazing. And then, I'm a person who has a little bit of FOMO, right? I didn't want to miss out on all this stuff that was going on at night. So as to finish the day shift, and there was this like cute little bar, right? Not that I'm saying you have to go to the bar, but there's like a cute little bar right across from the street, and you just stand there, and then you just watch them put the panels up, right? And I'd look at them and I'd say, okay, how long do you think they need the crane per panel? Once they hook the panel up, what's the downtime between the next panel, right? So I'm thinking through this, and I'm going, okay, day 1, they installed 2 panels, right? Day 2, they got 6 panels. And then things get better, right? When you pick momentum up, and I'm like, you're supposed to be installing 12 panels a day. They never installed 12 panels a day. It was like mostly 8, 10, right? That's pretty good. But I think by watching that, I could understand what the tower crane operator was doing, how quickly you were installing. Were you welding right away, or were you just going to the next panel? You're going to the next panel. You can come back and weld, right? Because tower crane time is super precious, correct? So as I sat there watching this, I think this is when I realized, I was like, I actually love this, love watching it, right? You're sitting there watching what you're creating day and night, and it's a very beautiful thing. And that's what I think, when I look at most people in construction, that is what drives them, right? Everybody says, I think I was talking to Sir here, and he was saying, I'm building the Taj Hotel, right? And when he drives by it, I'm sure there's like this personal amount of pride. Every time we fly through Boston, right, Arjun and I are like, you know what's behind that door? I know what's there. Right? So there's that immense amount of joy that you get when you're building something. And then a few years later, we moved to Atlanta, new city, down in the South. This is when I found Batson-Cook Construction. So like she was telling you, the company's been around for 120 years. And what they did was build high-rises, right? But not like any high-rise. Let's build a high-rise from start to finish, 25 stories, 26 stories in less than 12 months. Okay, start to finish, like hand over the keys, we are done with the project, 12 months. And this is where I learned a lot about lean construction. So you'll see the photo on the right here, that's kind of the finished project. And then you'll see a parking deck here. And then you'll see this is kind of what, a typical construction job site looks like on the left. So one of the challenges, and then let's see if I can figure out this laser pointer thing. Probably not. Okay, so one of the challenges was when you're trying to build a tower, there's no place for the parking deck, right? You can see you need all this lay down area, right? You need to put all the materials down. So the client looked at us and said, we have no parking, and we need the parking deck 3 months sooner. By the time I had joined the project, my project executive had already said, yes, of course, we'll do it, right? Who knows how to say no to a client here? Anyone? No, right? You say, yes, sir, we'll figure it out, right? So we sit there, we're figuring it out. I'm talking to the precast guy, and I'm like, okay, listen, if we have to do the parking deck, how many pieces does the parking deck has? So it's about 700. So I'm counting, right? Now I'm going back to my panel days, and I'm going, okay, if you do 12 pieces a day, that's about 45 days, and we don't have 45 days, right? So what are we gonna do? So we're sitting in a team meeting, and there's like Joe the plumber, right? He's sitting way in the back. And he says, Miss Neha, you see that road over there? That's called Georgia 400, okay? It's a big freeway, right? And what if we close the freeway down, right? And we'll put all the precast trucks over there. We can take it above the wall. And then, if we can get precast to the job site faster, you can get 2-erection crews, and you can go faster. And I was like, okay, and I can dream about unicorns and rainbows, because that ain't happening, right? Who closes freeways down in the US? No one. It's pretty hard. So I'm sitting there that night and going, okay, you know what? Maybe he's not right, because if you're getting it the traditional way, it's like a 2-way road. It's from Peachtree, then you're going to make a left, you're going to make a right. Precast pieces are about 90 feet long. So you can really get them one piece in one truck, right? So how many trucks need to come in? They're coming in one way, going out the same way. You're not getting 12 pieces a day, right? It doesn't matter if you work like 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. So I sit there and I'm like, okay, right? So what do you do when you need a friend? You go to LinkedIn? Yes, maybe? Okay, so I went on LinkedIn, and then I started looking at tech. This was Georgia DOT. So I started looking for who heads up Georgia DOT, right? Looked through some engineers, found this person. And I was like, okay, I'll send him a request, right? This is about Friday night. Send him a request. 10 minutes later, my phone beeps. It's like, accepted my friend request. That's pretty exciting, right? Like instant gratification right then and there. So anyways, 10 minutes later, then I send him a message saying, listen, I'm a project manager, I'm working on this project, and we're trying to get precast in, we're trying to turn over the parking deck to this developer quickly. I need your help. And he says, okay, come meet me Monday morning, and then he replies back to the message, right? I'm like surprised that he's replying back. Replies back to the message and says, come meet me Monday, 8 a.m. And the first thing I go, oh shit. Right? Not prepared for this meeting. But anyways, so I decide, okay, I've got to have a plan together if I'm going to go meet this person. So I have a friend who works in the permitting department. And I take him with me, we zip across in my Mini, park on the side of the road, which you shouldn't do, right? Again, don't do most of the things that I do, but some you can follow. So you park on the side of the road, I take some photos, and then I get this guy to help me, and what does he put together? He puts a traffic control plan together for me. Right, so we're gonna now spend on messaging boards, we're gonna figure out how to sort of like shut this lane down, okay? Anyways, put together a whole plan, makes it pretty, gets it back to me on Sunday. Monday at 8 a.m., I walk into TxDOT's office. Georgia DOT's office, I keep saying TxDOT. So I walk into their office, and suddenly there's like 5 big dudes, right? Like they're 6'4", very scary looking. Almost shut the door, and I'm like, let me just run back to my office. This is very scary, right? But I'm like, I've come this far, spent Sunday, spent a bunch of money doing this traffic control. If it doesn't get approved, I'm gonna be in big time trouble. But anyways, right, I walk into his office, and he says, hi Neha, come on in, right? We sit down, I walk him through the plan, and he said, okay, this looks good. And I'm like, just like that? And he said, yeah, this is good. So I'm kind of like scared, because I was like, maybe he's just saying yes, right? Like, who knows? So I was like, no, can you send me an email? Here's my work email address. Send me an email, tell me like, this is really good. Because if I go back to the office, I don't think anyone's gonna believe me. Right? You just don't walk into TxDOT's office, tell them you're gonna close the freeway. And I needed it for about like 60 days. So it wasn't like a 1-day, 2-day thing, right? So by the time I get back to the office, he has sent me an email, he's approved my plan, and then on my way out, he also tells me, you know, come and make sure you attend these weekly meetings. So I make sure I'm attending all the weekly meetings. A couple of weeks later, we have, I wish I had a picture of it, I don't have it anymore, but we had like 20 trucks parked on the side. We picked up precast. On the best day, I think we were installing about 27 pieces a day, which was amazing. I don't think I've ever done that, right? And then can you imagine like the progress, right? So exciting, it's going up so quick. One of my friends was like, this is like playing with a Lego set. It really was, right? Like, it's tic-tac-toe, it's going up really quick. And then we turned the parking deck over 3 months ahead of schedule, which was amazing, right? Never heard of. But I think the part of me telling you all of this is if you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no, right? So think outside the box, figure out who your friends are, figure out who your network is, and then problem solving can be done in a lot of different ways, right? And you're not alone doing this. What was neat is that suddenly from then, you know, there were a lot of project managers within Batson-Cook, but somehow people got to know me, right? They said, oh, she did this. Client came, shook my hand, said, thank you very much. We didn't think you could do it, right? And then for the same client, we built 4 other parking decks. Didn't go as fast. You know, it was kind of like the regular parking decks, but it was pretty cool. So from there, I had my second kid, and I decided that I couldn't travel all the fun places that we could. And so my manager said, well, why don't you come move to healthcare, right? And healthcare is its own beast. They have their own language. They really do, right? They have 3-letter acronyms that I'd never heard of. Let's go to triage, let's go to ICU, here's the NICU, here's ORs. Well, there's PETs and PET CTs and MRIs, and I'm like trying to figure out what machine does what, right? But it was really cool. One of the nice things about healthcare construction is you dealt with savvy vendors. They were definitely the best of the best. So my first healthcare project, because there's no point doing anything small, right? You gotta go big or go home. So first healthcare project was, if you can see kind of the picture, it was a full city block. We were doing a medical office building, about 12 stories, 120,000 square feet, with about a 1,000-space parking deck and a 2-story cancer center. And then a lot of other things, like exam rooms, like CTs, MRIs, all of those things that I had never built before. But the nice thing is, I had a really good group. You know, we were about 20 people on site. And I know 20 doesn't seem like a lot here, right? Like here, y'all have a lot of people on site. So let me give you like maybe a visual, right? When I did the airport, and we were about 60 people on site, That is almost like the 5th largest construction company in Boston. 60 people, that big, right? So 20 people on site, and that was just salaried. And then I think we had about like 50, 60 of our own concrete guys. We poured our own concrete, poured our own columns, slabs, all of that, right? So you have a lot more control. Now this is where, what was really cool is I had project engineers, APMs, project managers. So this is where I think I look back, and I transitioned from managing projects to managing people, right? How fun is managing people? Says no one, right? It's a little bit, you deal with people issues. Everyone comes in saying, well, I don't understand this, or helping or mentoring people, right? But this is where I transitioned from sort of learning to build buildings to managing people. One of the other changes that we had is we decided to move to Dallas, Texas, right? So now you're going to remotely manage people and manage a project in Atlanta. So I was traveling weekly, and then I would try to make sure in the 3 days of that week, you're trying to fill in 5 days of work, right? And then when you're remote, I remember my superintendent used to call me and says, hey, what are you doing? I was like, just doing laundry, right? I'm like drinking beer. He's like, really? I was like, no, I'm not, I'm working, right? But construction is if you're not there suffering with me, you don't exist, right? It's very field-oriented. So it took a while for him to understand that. But once he did, things got a lot easier. And then came a really good story, which is at the end of the project, I went to my CEO and I said, hey, this was a lot of fun. What should I do next? So he said, okay, well, there are lots of options. You're really good. You've worked with Batson-Cook for almost 10 years. Why don't you do pre-construction or help our teams offsite? I said, that's great, but why don't we start an office? And then they say, why don't you start an office? So it's kind of scary because you should be careful what you wish for. I had never really started an office or, I don't know, like won a client, or I didn't know how to pitch to people, right? If I'm going to go and talk to people, that's a very scary thing, right? For someone like me, I'm a full-on introvert, right? When I had people come into our house, I would go hide behind the curtains, right? So now you're asking me to go talk to strangers and be friends. Like, wow, right? Who likes to talk to strangers here? No one, except for maybe Arjun, maybe mom. That's awesome. You're meant for business development. It's amazing. Okay, I did not have that skill set at all, right? It was very scary. So, you know what I decided? I was like, if I'm going to do this, you're going to do this like 120%, right? So, made a plan. And I said, okay, the first 6 months, I'm going to meet a new person for breakfast, a new person for lunch, and a new person for dinner. Okay? So that means you have to set up so many meetings, and then you have to go out and meet these people, and hopefully they won't get bored when I'm talking to them because I don't know anything about Texas. I don't know where Garland or Grapevine is, right? And they're going to talk about all these Texas things, and I'm going to be like, okay, yeah, I get you, but I don't. But I'm like, okay, I'm going to come up with a few questions, right, that I can ask these people. So I'm not a small talker. If you're sitting with me at dinner, we're not going to small talk, right? My first question to you is, what are your struggles, right? We're going to get deep. We're going to get to know each other. Second question I usually ask people is, what is your biggest achievement, right? Professionally and personally. And that got them talking, so I'd really get to know them, what they like, what they care about, right? Some will talk about their kids. And then I'm going, okay, I want to get to know about your family. I want to get to know about your interests. This is when I decided I was going to pick up shooting, hunting, start watching college football. It was a complete disaster, right? Because I was trying to be somebody that I wasn't. So I didn't stick with college football, but I did pick up golf, which was a lot of fun. But the idea was, I think as you do business development, right, even if you're an introvert, go out, meet people, be authentic, be who you are, and they'll meet you where you are. This is where you probably make the most genuine friendships, right? There's no point having like 100 best friends, but have 5 best friends who are gonna actually open up their phone book and say, hey Neha, I think you should meet this one. This guy runs a hospital, he'll help you out. And so I got a little bit more intentional, right? I first kind of went a little bit wide. Then I was like, okay, let's go a little deep. So I figured I would show you my journey of how this started, if this works. So this was me, 2018, right? Let's start an office. Woohoo! Let's go. There's no followers, right? Which is very scary. It's like almost like you're dancing on your own, and it's like this weird, awkward dance. And then we had 4 people who were crazy enough to join me. So I got to tell you about my first project because it's pretty epic, right? We're sitting, I'm like watching someone give a panel discussion. This guy's name is Juan Guerra, right? He's the head of facilities at UT Southwestern Hospital, biggest hospital in Texas. He starts walking down this conference. I catch him. And I was like, please, sir, I need 30 minutes of your time. Poor guy, I don't know about him. He must have felt really sorry for me. Gave me his card. He said, yes, I'll meet you for 30 minutes. And he did. First question he asked me is, have you done any healthcare in Texas? I said, no. But we've done all this work in Georgia, right? So you need that person to give you sort of a leap of faith, right? And said, okay, we'll figure this out, Neha. We'll teach you along the way. He introduces me to a few people. And then we put together a few proposals, 3rd or 4th proposal in, and I'm like looking at the results, we're high, right? There's somebody else who's winning the work. It's very depressing, right? When you're losing, it's very depressing. I'm very competitive, so I hate losing at tennis and I hate losing work, right? So anyways, and the third or 4th proposal, he gets us in and he says, I know you're high, but we're gonna give you an opportunity, right? I'm almost like, this is crazy, this is amazing, right? What was the opportunity? It was a 10,000 square feet renovation. Very small, right? But you don't say no to the small stuff. You really don't. When you're starting out, one of the big things you do is you say yes. And I did, right? And it was me and it was just Emil. I looked at him and I said, Emil, you're a boy, you're gonna be a superintendent, I'm a girl, I'm gonna be a project manager, right? You're gonna be out on site, and then we'll figure this out. It was a 4-month renovation filled with lots of, I'm gonna say issues, right? Because you're in construction. You're gonna have issues every single day, right? But we figured it out, and then from there on, we never left that campus. And so just based on doing work with one client at UT Southwestern, oh, yeah. And then 2020, 2021, and then here was 2022. So let me tell you about 2022, right? 2021, we had done 17 small projects for UT Southwestern, okay? This is where we did ORs and we did NICUs, we did temp parking lots, we put fiber. I've never put fiber in, but we figured out how to do it. Dining facilities, libraries, everything in between. And then they said, we've got a big project, and it is taking 1 million square feet of 3 high-rise towers, and it's blowing them up, right? So cool. James Bond moment, maybe, right? And so we did, we got selected. We beat out somebody who had done demolition for UT Southwestern, right? And went in and did that. I had never worked with dynamite before, but it was super cool. It shows up in this just like you think about it, right, in the movies. Shows up in this black car. It's got all these cops around it. You got to put it in a secret location. Pretty much from the time the dynamite goes from the car into the building, right, it's watched by Dallas Fire Department, Dallas Police Department, University, police, and all those people, right? Super cool. One of the things we did is we modeled that project because UT Southwestern kept asking us, how's the building going to fall? I was like, I don't know. It's going to fall down. You'll see it when you see it, right? That wasn't a really good answer. So we modeled it, and we told them this is how it's going to look. And if y'all want, if you ping me on LinkedIn, I'll send you like the video of like actual and how it happened. And it's amazing, right? I remember the day of like the implosion, standing there watching this. I'm holding Arjun's hand. I was like, I hope this goes well. If not, my keys are on the table, and I'm going to have to go to Houston or Austin or some other city, right? Because when something like this goes bad, it's pretty bad, right? So anyways, so one big project, and then that allows you to, of course, hire some people, and then some more, and then some more, right? So anyways, so that's a little bit about me. And y'all are so quiet. Does anyone have any questions so far? Any questions? Oh God, none? Thank you, SBK uncle. That's true. Absolutely. So most people have this, right? But they may not admit to you is the fear of failure, right? All of us are scared, right? I'm used to like usually talking to 60 people. This is a lot for me, right? To walk in and be like, okay, I'm going to be really cool about this. So all of us have this. And the question is whether you can overcome it, right? The first time is always the hardest. And I think to overcome it is sitting down and saying, okay, what do I know? And how little do I know? And then how much do I need to learn? So one of the cool things about the implosion was we spent a year planning it. And what was really nice is, you know, all of us do construction, right? We all know how to build buildings. First you put a slab, and then you do all of the other slabs, then you do the exterior, then you put a roof, then you do the interiors, right? But then let's talk about destruction. How do you do that? Nobody really talks about it. But what's really cool is we met this blast scientist who came in, and he would sit with us every week. And I would ask him a question, like, if we want to, you know, have the building drop this way, what do you do? He's like, oh, that's easy. You do this, this, this. Move this from here. This will go after 25 seconds. This will happen here. And I was like, oh, that's really cool, right? So he showed us how you could shift things around on a given flow. And then he'd sit down and say, okay, if you want this to go down in 25 seconds, here's what you do, right? So you really become, kind of sometimes I tell people, you become like a lawyer, right? You go deep and narrow and learn along the way. And as you do, you're kind of constantly checking, is this right? Right? So you usually have a friend or a community of people that you can chat with and say, hey, I think this is how we're going to do it, which was pretty amazing. Right when we were blowing up those buildings, there was a project in Dallas. They look it up. It was called, I think, the Leaning Tower or something like that. They tried to blow it up, and they didn't have enough dynamite, so the thing was like leaning, just like this, for about 2 months. And they had to get a wrecking ball and then take it down. So one of the sessions that we did with the whole team is what went wrong on that project. How do you make sure we got enough dynamite? Because there's never enough dynamite, right? Okay, that's a joke. There is enough dynamite. Okay, we had about 1,400 pounds of dynamite. And how do you make sure there's just enough dynamite, right? Because you don't want to make it like Diwali where like you take the whole town down, right? That would be not fun. We were 5 minutes away from the airport too. So you had to make sure, like imagine you're like flying and suddenly you see like stuff blowing up. Do you think you want to land? No, right? That's pretty scary. You're like, okay, shit is going down. This is terrible. But anyways, so we studied how to do that for about a year. And then you become students of it. And then I think once you do, I think a little bit out of your comfort zone, then it's almost like an addiction. You want to do it again, right? And then again, and then again. And then as you get successful in doing uncomfortable things, it becomes second nature. right? Maybe? Okay. So I usually ask the class at this point is, what is your biggest, what are you most scared of? I want to hear, what are you most scared of? Some people are scared of spiders, right? What else? Fear of looking stupid? Yes? What else? What about fear of regret? What if you never do something that you love? Maybe? Or maybe when you become old like me, then you'll get like all these regrets, right? Like right now you're like full of sunshine and amazing and rainbows. Any other fears? Can I hear anyone? Fear of failure. How many people have fear of failure here? A lot, right? All of us do. So one of the things I did a couple of months ago, I should tell you about this, right? I went to this company called McKesson, and they're a big, giant, like billion-dollar firm, right? We're sitting there, we're talking about like how's life, how's construction, how's business going. Then I'm talking to the business development guy. You know what he has? Fear of failure, just as much as me. I was like, God, man, same thing. So everyone has it. It really depends on whether people voice it or not. So let's go to sort of like 4 pillars of running a construction business. Business development, everyone knows that, right? Pre-construction. What do you think pre-construction is? What does that mean to you? Planning. That's right. What else? What else do you do in pre-construction? Preparing a project charter. That's true. What else? Resource management. That is true. What else? Feasibility study. Okay, yes. Is it going to work? How long is it going to take? All of that. What else? Finances. That's true, right? What if you run out of money? Then what happens? Oops. Yes, that too. What else? Say that again. Clearance, permits. That's correct. Yes. Because can you start without a permit? No, right? What else? Risk analysis, very important. Very, very important. How do you think our risk analysis went on that demo project? Right? We said, these are all the things that could go wrong. And then we got super scared and went home that day. Then we came back again the next day. Don't worry, we all came back, right? Okay, what about putting an estimate together? Do you do that? Right? How much is it going to cost you? What about scheduling? Do you do that in pre-construction? Yeah? What do you all use? Project? Primavera? P6? Who uses P6 here? Put your hands up. Let me see. It's a pretty hard program, you guys. That's awesome. Okay. Okay, back in the day when I used P6, it was called P3. Now you're like, look at you, P6, huh? So cool. That's awesome. What about BIM modeling? Do you all do any of that? Yeah? So if it's like a really complicated project, you're going to try to do a BIM model, right? Figure out overhead clash detection, how many issues you're going to have, then try to fix those. Yeah? Okay. What about marketing? What do you think marketing does? Say that again. They smile? Sorry, no. It gets money to the business, right? So let's say you're in my shoes, right? You're running Batson-Cook. You're in Texas by yourself. You're new. You're meeting all these scary people. Okay, maybe not so scary. You're meeting all these new people. How do you do marketing? How do you get the brand out? What do you think you do? Say that again. Explaining. Say that loudly. Positive sides of the company, right? Like, look at all this stuff. Look at what we did before, right? If we did this in Georgia, do you think we can do this in Texas? Yes. Talk about past experience. What else? Strategy. How do you strategize? what do you think you do? Do you go to industry events? Go meet people? Network? Shake hands, kiss babies? Or maybe shake babies, kiss hands? No? Okay, let's not shake babies, okay. Yeah, networking. What about LinkedIn? Do you get your brand out by LinkedIn? Right? How many people on LinkedIn here? Put your hand up. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, how many people on LinkedIn who are my friends? Come on, put your hand up. Let me see, who are my friends here? All right, that's awesome. So proud of you. Okay? All right, what about operations? What is the hardest part about running a construction company? Everything goes wrong every single day, right? This person hasn't shown up at the job site. Did he get the wrong material? Yes. He submitted this and got this, right? What about COVID? Couldn't get materials on time. What about projects running behind? Right? That happens all the time, every day. And then what do? Just slide your schedule to the right? No. Then you work weekends, right? Maybe? Okay. So let's take a deep dive in this. Okay, so when I started doing business development, my idea of business development, right? I'd look at all my BD people and they say, you know what they're doing? 2 things that business developers do. What do you guys think? What are they doing? Golfing, right? And then happy hour, right? 4 o'clock, happy hour, all looking so happy, amazing, going out with a client, sorry, I can't work, right? Then showing up next day at 10 a.m. What were you doing? Out with a client. So my impression of business development, that's why I took up golf, by the way, right? I'm pretty okay, right? I can hold my own. So I was like, we're going to golf, and then we're going to do happy hours, right? I'm going to network with a lot of people. How much business do you think that got me? Nothing wrong with that, right? But what's the issue there? I'm networking, right? I'm not building relationships. What's the difference? Just because I'm golfing with you, are you going to give me business? Maybe, right? Maybe you'll take a chance. The first one. What's missing in there? Say that again. That's a really good one. Who's that? Put your hand up. I can't see. Oh my God. What is your name? Tejas. Come on, put our hands together for Tejas. That is amazing, Tejas. So good. So good. So trust is a big deal, right? So this is where I decided I'm going to read a book on trust, right? Because you got to do that, right? How else are you going to learn? So I read this book at that point in time. Look it up. It's a really good book. I liked it. One of my favorites. It's called Speed of Trust. Okay? I forget who wrote it. But he said 2 things. Okay? 2 things to build trust. One is they have to like you. Okay? They really have to like you. So that goes with the golfing. That goes with the 4 p.m. happy hour. You're going to get to know me. We're going to chit-chat. We'll talk about business. I'll struggle through the small talk. Somehow figure that out, right? But then the second piece, what do you think is the second piece? How else would you build trust? Once you like me, you want to give me business, how do you think you'll return back to me? What do I have to do? Say that. Work. Walk your talk. Correct. What else? Expertise. Correct. Right? What if I come and tell you I'm a really good plumber and I can fix your sink? Do you believe me? No, I can't fix the sink. Don't hire me to fix the sink. Right? But the second part is competence, expertise. Right? If I do a really bad job, even though I'm super friendly, amazing, I take you out golfing, take you out happy hour, do you think you're going to come back to me? No, right? So really have to be good at what you do. Right? Your first job you'll get based on the likability. But your repeat work, has to come from doing an amazing job. Okay? And people only remember your last project. So imagine if you do 10 amazing projects and then you suck at number 11. What happens? You don't get it, mom. That's right. They're going to go to someone else. Right? They're going to say, hey, we're going to try someone else because you weren't really good at it. I don't know if you're going to be good again. Right? What if you're giving me your C players? There's like this doubt. Right? So the other piece on business development is feedback from losses. Okay, so let's play this game, right? It's 2018. We're putting out proposals. And let's say we put out 10 proposals. How many do you think we won? What percentage? Say that loudly. 10%. Who said 10%? Amazing. What's your name? Madhu. That's awesome. Okay, we got Tejas there and Madhu there. Madhu here. All right, put it. That's awesome, Madhu. Okay, 10% is really bad, but that's what it was the first year, right? So if I'm saying 10% is really bad, if you're putting out 10 proposals, what do you think you should win? What should be like your win ratio if you run your own construction company? 60%. Mom, you're a rock star, but not 60%. Huh? That's my mom, like always aiming high. What do you think? 40? Who said 40? Okay, pretty close. So 30 to 40%, right? And that's probably in the US. I don't know here if it's more or less, but usually I think with any business, right, you start at 10% and then you're going up, okay? Some quarters, I'll tell you this, we got so good that our win percent was almost 80%, right? Which is amazing. But what do you think happened? What's the issue with winning 80% of your work? What happens when you win so much? Okay, let me say it loudly because there's so many of you guys, I can't hear. Somewhere in the middle. Overconfidence. No, there's nothing as overconfidence, buddy. Nothing. Overconfidence is pretty good, right? Then you go do like cool things. What else? What do you think you win so much work? What happens? Expectations, right? What if you don't have enough people? What happens to your staffing? Right? Overexposure. Absolutely, right? What if you win so much work that you can't handle? Workload, right? Then you're burning out your people. And what happens? Then they say, see you later. Go to the next company, right? Where I get 40 hours, I get weekends. I don't want to work in a sweatshop, right? So you got to be really kind of pretty careful how much you're winning, how you're staffing, right? Don't grow too fast. You know, you hear people sometimes say that, right? Because your systems are not in place. So that's one issue that you can have if you win too much, right? But we were in a pretty good place. You can see we were hiring quite well. So it was fine. It wasn't too bad. Worked some weekends, but, you know, not going to complain. So let's talk about the next one, which is win strategy. So I'll give you an example, and then you guys tell me what your win strategy should be, okay? So we are putting together a project proposal, okay? It's kind of a university just like NICMAR. It's called University of North Texas. And they're building a new residence hall, right? Because they have so many students coming in. They need like a new dorm for their first year students, okay? And they say, you know, we're going to do about 500 beds in phase 1, 500 beds in phase 2. It's going to be about $70 million. And we want to have this open before fall of 2027. Okay? This is about the information they give us. What do you think should be your win strategy? All right, come on. Everyone's a winner here. What should be your win strategy? If you're putting together a proposal, you want to look different from your competition. What is the one thing that this client cares about? Time, right? Why does he care about time? Okay, say that louder. Students are coming the next semester, right? What if that residence hall is not ready? Or what if that dorm is not ready? Then what happens? Then where do the students stay? With their mamas and papas? No? Okay. But they stay in a hotel, right? All right. So that is true, right? And then I don't know if you have this here, but let's introduce this concept of liquidated damages. Have you all heard that? Everyone has. That's amazing. Okay. So if one person of y'all can put your hand up, what does liquidated damages mean? Come on, my front benchers, be brave. Put your hand up. Oh God, no. Okay, how about my back benchers, be brave. Put your hand up. What is liquidated damages? No one. All right, middle side, this is like my cool side, right? Okay, Tejas, what is liquidated damages? What happened? Slept through like construction law class? No, it hasn't started yet. No. Does anyone want to help Tejas? Monetary payment if you don't finish on time, right? Say that again. Penalties, that's correct. So do you think the penalties are small or are they big? They're big, right? Why do they want to do big penalties? Because they want to scare you. They want to make sure you finish on time, right? Okay, so let's talk about another concept besides liquidated damages. So this project had liquidated damages of $1,500 per day, per bed. Okay, per calendar day, per bed, no grace period. But then let's talk about consequential damages. What does that mean? Has anyone heard this term? Consequential damages. Sir, say that. Hostels are not available, right? So everyone go back, maybe use ChatGPT or Google, right? Look up consequential damages. So that is essentially loss of use, loss of revenue. All right? So let's say UNT doesn't have a residence hall and you're coming from Houston, Texas. Well, no, let's say you're coming from Amchi, Pune, all the way to Texas, right? And you've got admission, but you don't have a place to stay. And then you say, you know what, that's fine, I'm gonna go to University of Chicago, right? How much did University of North Texas lose? They lose fees, right? And then suddenly the enrollment goes down, right? Still have the same cost, same faculty. So what happens then? They take that over and they pass it to the builder or the general contractor. And they say, hey, sorry, you're late. Let's charge you $1,500 a day per bed. Also, here's consequential damages. Have a nice day. No? Yeah. So you really have to worry about the schedule, right? So our strategy, our win strategy was not only did we meet all the subcontractors and vendors, we put together a schedule that had their buy-in. And then we looked at the building and we said, how can we build faster? And we showed them 6 different ways of how to build faster. The place that we were building in had some small, like concrete guys. So we decided we were going to bring some big concrete guys, big glass guys from Houston, right, and help the project. Because when you have manpower, then you're progressing, right? You're not waiting for men to show up. You have men, you have materials, you're going to progress. And then we showed them a fast schedule, regular schedule, and then an aggressive schedule, right? So really, every proposal that you go in, have to go in and figure out what's important to the client, what's a win strategy. Next thing in business development is focus on 5. What do you think that means? What do you think that means? Top 5. Say that again, top 5. Top 5 priorities, right? Absolutely. Top 5 clients. So if I'm trying to be everything to everyone, how awesome am I going to be? Not that good, right? How many things can you focus on at one time? 1, 2, maybe 3, right? I can probably text talk, cook, and have a conversation with my child at the same time. Right? So that's about 4 things. So focus on top 5, top 10 clients, right? Because if you're going to focus on everything, then you're not really focusing on anything, right? So focus on, when you start out, say, hey, these are my top 5, right? So I decided when I started, it's like I actually don't know who my top 5 is. So I started with a really big base, and then I said, okay, we won our first project in healthcare. So then I started focusing on all healthcare systems. And then I said, oh, wow, we started building labs. Well, then let's focus on university. So focus on where the success is coming from, and then what you can handle, okay? And then the last thing is building a pipeline. So if you want to grow, do you have to build a pipeline? Yes? Right? When you build a monster, do you have to feed the monster? You do, right? If you go from 1 person to 2, you need 2 projects, 3 projects. What happens if you have 100 people? You need 100 projects, right? And then you need 100 projects now, and then you need 100 projects coming up in 3 months, when these 100 get over, maybe a year from now, right? So you have to build that pipeline. So what are you constantly doing? You're constantly putting proposals, you're constantly meeting new clients. Interestingly enough, you're constantly focusing on your 5, and then you're figuring out, okay, how are we growing? What's a good, someone asked me this the other day, what's a good growth percentage? If you had a company, how much would you want to grow? Say that. Who said? Someone said 50%? Put your hand up. No? Did I hear anything? 10%? Is 10% good? 30%? Who said 30%? That's like aggressive like my dad, right? Okay, so 10 to 15% is usually a good number. Okay? Don't take on more that you can chew. Make sure you have your systems, your processes. Make sure you're doing a good job on the work that you're working on, right? Otherwise, you become too big, and then suddenly you're not executing, right? So 10 to 15% is good. We probably grew a little bit faster than that. Sometimes it felt like you're skiing, and then you're on the top of a mountain slope, and then you're coming down the Black Diamond, right? Holy crap, and you don't know how to ski. But that's what building a construction company is all about, right? Super exciting. Okay, let's go to marketing. I think the first 4 items, they're pretty self-explanatory, but let's talk about hit rate, bid versus win. So there's 2 types of contracts. One is, and then tell me if you guys know this, right? One is a hard bid, open bid, right? You put out a proposal, I'm going to give you a number, and then you're going to pick me based on the low number. Does that make sense? Who usually does that kind of work? Government, right? Institutions. How do you think that works out? Good? Sometimes we say this in the business, right? It's like the spiral down to the bottom. Who missed who what? What about the quality? What about partnership? Do you get that in a low bid? No, right? They're like, I gave you a number. Here you go. Right? Talk to my hand. No, I'm just kidding. Not talk to my hand, but okay. So let's talk about the other way of doing business, which is a partnership. It's usually called construction management at risk. Have you all heard that? Yeah? You're not shaking your hands. CMAR. Okay, so the way that usually works is you put together a proposal, they like you, step 1. They think you're competent, step 2. They pick you, right? We're not talking numbers at all. They pick you based on your qualifications, and then you work with them when they haven't designed. Maybe the design is on a napkin sketch, and they figure out how much it's going to cost, right? So if I give you a napkin sketch and say, it's a, 20,000 square feet office building, right? You're going to put together a rough order of magnitude. Maybe it's like $200 a square foot. And you go, yeah, it's roughly this much. Here's the schedule. Then they draw some more. And then you go, yeah, it's about the same number, right? And you've figured out escalation, right? Do you guys put an escalation number? Usually 2%, 4%, right, as pricing goes up. Maybe some contingencies. And then you give them sort of a Gmax number. Does that make sense? You give them a GMP and say, hey, this is the number, we're not going to go over it, and then we're going to build it for that. And then you do pre-construction for maybe 9 months, 12 months, 15 months, depending on the type of project, right? But then if the client says, hey, you know what, I want to add something, I want to do something, do you help them out? Yes, because it's a partnership. What do you think is a better way to do business? Which one? Construction management, at risk, CMAR, right? But what happens if you don't have the qualification? What happens if you're like new, like me in Dallas? Have you built a healthcare project? No. Then what do? Then you start with the hard bid, right? And then you build a portfolio. And at some point, when you have enough hard bid, then you can go to the partnership mode. And hopefully do that, and do more of that. Okay? Okay, pre-construction, one thing I'll hit on is trade partner relationships. What does that mean to you? Vendors, right? Suppliers. Who do you use for concrete? Who do you use for steel, glass? What happens if you have an amazing relationship with them? Say that louder. They give you references. They give you competitive pricing, right? So what happens if they give you better numbers than your competition? Do you think you win sometimes? You do, right? So sometimes when we're looking at a bid, and it's like bid day, I'll pick up the phone, I'll call some of my vendors, and I'm like, hey, can you cut 20 grand from this? And then yes, if the relationship is there, they're like, hey, are you trying to win this one? I'm like, yes, absolutely. They'll help you out, right? And hopefully you can win those projects. So that's important in pre-construction. This probably will look very different for you guys. But in the US, you have kind of a left arm and a right arm, right, when you talk about construction. One is project manager, the other one is a superintendent, okay? Who do you think is more important? Or let me say this way. How many of you guys think the project manager is more important? Put your hand up. Okay, handful of people. How many of you all think the superintendent is more important? Okay, handful of people. How many of you think that both are important? All right, y'all are pretty smart. Tejas, you have a good class, man. It's awesome. Okay? Yes, they're both important, right? Left hand, right hand. So superintendent usually is out in the field, right? He's doing quality control, he's doing sequencing, safety. Project manager, usually balancing the financing. Making sure you're planning it correctly, making sure you're writing all the contracts. We do what's called a snapshot meeting. So every project we'll look at every month to make sure the health of the project is good, right? I don't want to get to the end of the project and realize we're losing money, okay? So we do that every month, and then both teams communicate. But really it's the project manager who's talking to the architect, he's talking to the owner, he's making sure change orders are done, all of those things. And then we also have a support function for accounting, for billings, right? How important are billings? You want to make sure you get paid on time, right? You want to make sure you're not banking the project. How often does that happen? You go 60, 90, 120 days without getting paid. That happens pretty often. So you must be sitting there saying, what the hell do I do? Right? Sit pretty, drink beer, play golf. What else? Run a business. So these are some of the things that I do, right? Tracking overhead costs. So let's ask you this question, is if you're running a business, what is your biggest cost? What is your biggest overhead cost? salaries. Who said salaries? What is your name? Hari. Awesome. Wait, put your hands together for Hari. That's true. Tejas, you got some competition, man. Huh? Hari's like going to answer all the questions from here on now. Okay, so yes, salaries, right? But let's talk specifically. Is you've got salaries of your project managers, superintendents, right? They bill to the jobs. What happens when you lose a job? You still have to pay for it, right? Someone has to estimate a job. Where does that go? That's like sunk costs. People say that, right? That's cost of doing business. So I tell my clients this because they have no clue, right? Sometimes they'll tell me, can you refresh your proposal? And I was like, okay, I'll do it. By the 5th time, I'm like, listen, every time I'm touching a proposal, it costs me $3,500, right? Can you be judicious about spending my money? Because it's free con. I don't even call it pre-con sometimes, right? It's free con. So that's overhead costs. What do you think your second big overhead cost is? Say that again. Equipment. Material. No, material will go towards the job, right? If I don't have a project, I'm not going to order material. Same thing with equipment. What about office space? Right? You have a like super nice, swanky office. Where do you think that cost goes? Overhead, right? What about, say that again? Power, electricity for your office, right? What happens if a superintendent finishes a job and his next job is not starting for another month? Overhead, right? That's called bench time. So you have to figure all of these things. But number one, your biggest cost is your people, right? Your pre-construction, your estimators. Maybe you can build some of it in your projects, but not everything, right? The jobs that you lose. So what happens if you lose a lot of jobs? Your overhead goes up, right? If you're winning a lot of jobs, your overhead goes down. If you have a big space, right, rent, all of those things, that's like the second factor. And then the third one is if you have rework, warranty costs. You know, we have this saying sometimes, not that I do it, they say we do it twice, but we do it nice. No one's laughing. Okay, it's a joke. We don't do it twice. How many of your budgets have money to do something twice? Anyone's budget? No? If anyone's budget has that, I want to be a part of your project. Okay, hire me, please. No one's budget has that, right? So if you mess up something, either you're passing it to your vendor, or let's say you look at a dimension, you gave somebody something wrong, then you own it. And then you fix it. And then you pay for it in time and material. So that's the third cost, right? Quality control. One of the other things I do is staffing, right? Sometimes it's like putting together a puzzle. Because, believe it or not, in a given week, we probably put out 4 proposals. Okay, so if we're having a really good quarter, we're winning 3 out of 4 projects. And then so you're trying to, almost like Tetris, right? You're trying to figure out which superintendent goes there, which project manager goes there. And then sometimes, you know, my PM looks at me, my project manager is like, why don't you hire some more? Right? Like, why are you just like trying to like, just do this? Why do you think I don't hire more than I need? Overstaffing. What is your name? Ramya. All right. Let's put our hands together, man. Look at you. Okay, we got Hari on this side, Tejas back there, Ramya here. This middle section, y'all got to do something. Okay, I'll throw some like easy questions. Okay? All right, so you have overstaffing. Where do you think that goes? Overhead, right? This person who's sitting there, what if a job gets canceled? Just sitting there. You're still paying a salary, right? Okay, so that's overstaffing. So we staff and we plan our jobs every week. And I kid you not, every week it changes. Because we win jobs, some jobs slide. You know, some they're like, oh, we want some change orders, they don't finish on time. all of those things happen, right? And then the last one is safety best practices. So what happens if you have an accident on your job site? God forbid, right? What happens? What else happens? Let's ask the middle group here. Yeah. Compensation needs to be paid, right? You know what insurance that is? Workers' comp insurance. Someone gets hurt, falls on your job site, you're paying workers' comp insurance, right? They'll hopefully come and sue you and say, my neck hurts, back hurts, all of that. You get a big, nice hospital bill, right? What about your reputation? Right? Screwed. I'm going to say Batson-Cook, they don't care about safety. Their job sites are run by like these kids. Nobody knows what's going on. People are getting hurt. How do you think the client feels? Do you think they feel confident that you got it? No, right? So back from the 1930s to now, right? I mean, you see construction safety changing every single day, right? So in the US, one of the things, if you show up at a job site, don't show up like me in like my Jesus sweet flip-flops, no, right? Show up in boots, long pants, safety vest, right? You're wearing your hard hat, you're wearing your glasses. Now, actually, all of our job sites have gloves, right? These are cut-resistant A4 gloves that are mandatory. Why? Because we started looking at our claims, and the biggest issue was people cutting their hands doing demo or drywall. And we realized instead of sending them, to the ER, what if we started wearing gloves? And then we realized that became less, right? So you're constantly learning. And then yearly tracking. How many of you have ever put together a business plan? Put your hands up. Anyone put together a business plan? What is your name? Janvi. Okay, that sounds awesome. So what did you put together a business plan for? For your startup. Okay. And then what did you do? What did you put in it? Yep. Yep. What is your startup potential? Financial plan. How many years did you go? 3 years. Okay. That's awesome. And then?
And I did put up the 3-year plan, the business plan. How much profit can I generate from my business?
Yes.
The revenue model.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah.
Then what happened? Did you execute the plan?
I haven't executed it yet, but I am like in the pre-seed funding stage.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So when you started, we're rooting for you. That's awesome.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, so when you put together a business plan, the first thing you go do is go find some really strong iced coffee, right? Get some like happy, like I'm a big fan of Dunkin' Ice, right? Went and got a big Dunkin' Ice coffee, get some like happy thoughts going, and then put together a plan. I did one for 5 years. So similar to Janvi, I figured out what markets were we going to go to, right? How far were we going to go? I was a little bit selfish about it. I have 2 kids, 10 and 13, and one of the things I wanted to do was go home every night, right? So my market plan had everything around 90 miles, okay? So that meant I could go somewhere, attend a meeting, come back, and get home, okay? 90 miles in and around of Dallas, right? And I picked my top 5 clients. I picked industry events that I was going to go to, and then really, a business plan is just a dream if you don't have financials, right? So you put together your overhead costs. Like day one, what are you going to need? What are you going to spend on, right? How much are you going to spend on? And then what is your revenue? So I put together a plan for 5 years, which is pretty exciting, just some numbers, right? It was very scary, especially year one, because I was like, how much do we want to do? So initially I was like scared, so I put 1 million. right? Then I looked at Arjun. Arjun said, babe, dream big, right? So I was like, okay, let's go 2 million. I was like, no, let's not go 2 million, right? So we went 10 million. And then the next year, 15% growth. So what's that? What is 15% of 10 million? 1.5 million, right? Now that's kind of, So I said, okay, let's go 15 million, right? Went a little bit bigger, and then went 25, and then year 4, 45, and year 5, 60. And then I turned the paper down because that was really scary. I was like, holy crap, we're gonna do 60 million, right? I was like, I need another coffee. Came back to it. I was like, okay, we can do 60 million. So, first year, how much do you think I did? Take a wild ass guess. 50 million. Look at my mom, yeah. So sweet. Wasn't 50 million, mom. I love you. But no. What do you think? 20. Look at this, man. I should have more overconfidence. You all really believe in me. Okay, first year, 1 million. Oh, right? A little bit. Because you got a plan, and then reality sinks in. And then you go ask all these people for work and money, and they're like your friends, but then it takes a while to start a business, right? So first year, 1 million. Second year was about 10 million. And then third year, we just took off like a freaking rocket, right? 25 million. Fourth year, 55 million. Fifth year, 75 million, right? And then, oh, thank you. Y'all want to clap for me? No. I have to get you all to do these things, right? I don't think I ever sat there going that we were going to be at 75 million, right? My goal was just one step at a time, one project, right? One client, one person, one hire. You start from there, you get a little bit successful, and then you try a little bit more. You make a bunch of mistakes. You write them. Right? I write all my mistakes in the back of a notebook. Maybe someday I'll write a book about it. And then go in the feedback loop, figure out your mistakes, make sure you don't do it again, and then make new mistakes, right? Because there's no fun without that. And then you go do some new things, and then now, it's interesting. A couple of years ago, we went in and we interviewed for what is called a BSL-3 lab. If you had asked me 4 months before the interview, what is a BSL-3 lab, I would probably tell you, I don't know, right? We'll figure it out. So then I started researching, started looking at podcasts. We went and pitched to the hospital president. And it was interesting. He asked me, he's like, how do you think you can build this if you haven't built this before? I looked at him and I said, look outside your window. We just blew up 3 buildings for you. And we hadn't done that before. So he almost got scared. He's like, who the hell did we hire, right? But I was like, the buildings were down. Everything was good. So he had a chuckle. And then I said, okay, let's hold up, right? Let's get to the next slide. And let me tell you all the things that could go wrong with your BSL-3 lab and how we have it figured out, right? Here's the issue. Here's the answers. And it was amazing. Right? This guy, at the end of it, he said, y'all came in, you pitched for a project that you hadn't built, you beat out some competition that had just done BSL-3 labs. So BSL-3 labs, by the way, right, these are the most complicated labs. These are labs where you are solving infectious diseases like Ebola. Okay, so one of the really important things about this is you want to make sure that these labs are sealed tight. Sealed tight to the point where one of the things you do in commissioning is you let air into the room, and then there's some big fat calculation, don't ask me that, but it essentially figures out how much leakage you are having over a certain period of time, and if it's more, then it's a needle in a haystack, which is you're trying to go, and when I say big room, I say 90,000 square feet, right? 5 floors, and you're trying to figure out vertically and horizontally where the hell the air is leaking from, okay? That's pretty scary. And so we told them, I said, here's how we're gonna figure out, right? And we gave them there are all these smoke tests. Look it up, right? It's pretty cool. Smoke test, pen test. We're gonna run air in the ductwork, where the ductwork is getting built, and then we'll show you what the leakage criteria is. And when it shows up on site, it's going to be completely sealed. So one of the cool things about a lab is all of your light fixtures, all of your outlets, all of your ceiling panels, everything had to have caulking around it, right? Because you're sealing it. One of the other things you have to make sure is if you have valves or anything like that, you have no access panels in there. Because what happens when you have an access panel? Do you have an air gap? Right? You open the access panel, damn, all the air is coming in. So you have to make sure during the design, during construction, that didn't happen. It was pretty cool. You know, we just did the commissioning and the leakage test a couple of weeks ago. Awesome. Clean as a whistle. So back to business plan, right? I don't think ever thought that we would build a BSL lab, but now we're doing more labs than anything else. We're also building our first fire station, which is amazing. I haven't done that before. Doing a lot of aviation work, right? Dallas-Fort Worth is blowing up. I didn't know this. It's the second busiest airport in the world. Okay, they are going to grow from 70 million passengers to 100 million passengers, so they want to put in about $9 billion worth of infrastructure. So that's actually a really good point, is you want to go where the work is, right? So if someone is building like that, that's where you want to go. I don't want to go to someone who's just doing 20 million, right? Then I'm like just competing for the scraps. That's no fun, right? So you want to go where the whales are, where the sharks are, right? Get some big projects, massive projects going, and then in and around that, you can do some of the small work. So anyways, put together a business plan, right? I do this every 5 years. I just had a big, large Dunkin' iced coffee last year to plan the next 5 years. And it's scary as hell, but we'll figure it out. The next thing is putting together a budget. So every month, I look at all of the projects, right? You know, one of the cool things, which is really nice, all of the projects that we have, and we've probably done, I don't know, 150, 200 projects, all of them make money, and then some, and then all of them finish on schedule, right? That's pretty cool. So this is making sure that your teams are doing all of the right things. Sometimes it's like, yeah, a week plus or minus, you know, maybe change orders, things like that. But for the most part, like the systems are humming, right? The team that's put in place is doing an amazing job. And my job now is to get out of the way, right? Like try not to get in their way of doing some good stuff. But then we put together budgets, right? And then I'll look at, okay, here's all the revenue that's coming in from the projects. Here's the overhead. Here's my net profit. How are we doing compared to the plan? We're doing pretty good. And then the 5 and the 10-year plan. That's all I had. Okay, not bad.
We extend our heartfelt thanks to Mrs. Neha Dugal ma'am for taking time out of her busy schedule for giving such an inspiring and thoughtful session. We kindly request all the dignitaries to make their way to the VIP lounge.
Mention their roll number.
April to 30. It is not yet sold. So
Okay, can you all hear me? Okay.
So I have a question here. Yes.
Oh.
So as you are progressing the talk, you have a lot of "I'll figure it out" energy in you. So what is a constant motivation to figure out things as you go through? You might be facing so many failures as well as setbacks. but you're constantly pushing yourself, even if it's new, I'll do it. So what is the constant motivation that you put yourself into that loop?
That's a really good question. So in my earlier years, right, you do a lot of I figure it out, and then some days you have bad days. I have a really good story, so I'll tell you this, and it'll make sense. I went and met a client one day, healthcare client, and I showed him my brochure, and I said, hey, here you go, here's who we are, here's Batson-Cook, please pick us. We're sitting there, while we're talking, this guy takes my brochure and puts it in the filing system, like right in front of me. And I'm going, what the hell, man? Like, so rude, at least do it behind my back, right? Let me walk out, and then you do it. And then you have a day like that. So then I look at him, and I was like, okay, what else can I do? All right? I even go to the point of asking him, do you have a foundation? Maybe we can, pay something towards, your, foundation for healthcare or whatever, right? Maybe there's, an in through a foundation. None. So the guy looks at me straight in the eye, and then he says, come back and meet me in 10 years. Right? And I was like, holy moly, 10 years. So I go home that night, drink a big, whole bottle of wine. Okay? Because how else you drown your sorrows? Just looking at him, he told me straight up, come back in 10 years, you suck. Right? It's not going to happen. Come back, get some more experience. And then the next day, went back to work, and I was like, listen, I'm not a quitter, right? We've come this far. We've done some amazing things. By the way, Janvi, not to scare you, but one of the stats, right, they say most startups, and they say 70% of them fail in the first 18 months, right? So I'm already scared about that. Then I go back in the office next day, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do about this guy, right? I have a lot of not so good words about him, but we won't talk about those on stage. And then I send him a calendar invite. August 28th, 2028. I send him a calendar invite just to tell him, watch me, I'm coming for you. A year later, I know, that's pretty cool, right? That's ballsy. I'm so proud of myself. It's like August 28, 2028, I'm coming back for you. I sent him a meeting invite, and I said, looking forward to working with you. Did not want to work with someone like that. One of the things you want to do, life is too short. You want to work with people who you enjoy working with, right? I'm not going to work with this guy who's just going to be mean, right? What do you think? If we work on a project with him, how do you think he's going to be? He's going to nitpick, right? He's going to try to find all the things that are wrong with construction. There's 100 million things that could go wrong. But anyways, I didn't want to let him have the pleasure of saying something to me like this. So I sent him a calendar invite. He did accept. What was interesting is a year and a half later, he got fired. Right? Because do you think I'm the only person that he was mean to? No. No. He dished it out everywhere, to everyone. About 2 years ago, I ran into him at a conference. Right? He still didn't have a job. It was pretty nice. I walked up to him and I said, listen, I've got a friend in that health system. I'm going to be there before 2028. I just want you to know. That felt so good. Right? So good. So it's moments like these, right, that drive you to get over some of the bad stuff. Okay? Thank you.
Hello. Hi, ma'am. Maniket this side. So I wanted to ask, what is the major difference you see, in starting a construction company in India versus in USA? The major challenges and the process overall.
That's a good question. I haven't started a company here in India, so I wouldn't know. But I'll tell you some of the things that were super helpful. And I tell myself this a few times, right? Just because I had moved to Texas, I was like, we're going to start an office, right? So my company has been talking about starting an office in Nashville for the longest time. And they keep looking at me saying, like, we should do this. And I was like, yeah, we absolutely should, right? You need to find somebody that's going to be brave enough to go do that. I think one of the nice things about DFW, I'll give you an example, right? Like, we moved into a new house, and the next day, doorbell rings, and this postman comes over. And he says, hi, do you remember his name? No, I don't remember the postman's name. Okay, anyways, so he comes in and he says, hi, I'm like Larry, right? I'm the postman. He says, welcome to the neighborhood. Right, like so sweet. Like he did not have to do that. He probably had like a ton of posts and a ton of places to go, right? Our neighbors from across showed up with like cupcakes and sprinkles. And they were like, welcome to the neighborhood, right? So one of the other things I think of is like, what if I decided to start a company in Boston, right? Boston's kind of a little bit hardcore, you know? They're kind of like in your face. I don't know if people would have given me warm introductions. I don't know if they would have like opened up their phone books and said, hey Neha, go meet this one. This one's gonna help you. So I think one part of it was definitely, I don't know, maybe right place, right time. A lot of late nights. But I think if I had to start a company in India, I could probably do it. Right? Maybe the same work ethic.
Like in India, it's like a government compliances and all those things. Like it takes time.
It takes
like
time.
5-10 years for like set up a company.
Yeah.
So like compared to USA and India, like how fast you can like build a company in USA.
That's true. I think you should start a company and then you tell me if you can go faster than me.
Ma'am, and one more question.
Okay, one more question.
One more question.
Yes.
So I'm a real estate student. So
Yes.
six to seven of us went to Singapore and Hong Kong for our industrial visit. So
Industrial visit.
Okay. So it was like a more of a real estate thing. So there we noticed like they are mainly focusing and efficiently focusing on mixed use developments and sustainability buildings. So what is the scene like in USA? Like, are they like focusing on mixed use real estate?
They are focusing on mixed use because what do you think is happening to office? Office is dead, slightly dead from COVID, right? So a lot of developers who had plans of building amazing office buildings, one of the things that they've been doing is they've been taking high-rise office buildings and converting them to apartments. And then when they come up with a big project, usually you want to start with the first set of people that are going to come are residents, right? So you want to do kind of like, I call it like eat, pray, love. Okay? You want to get like people living here, that's mixed use. Then you want to get a bunch of retail. You want to get a big anchor store, right? Maybe a Kroger, Whole Foods, something like that. And then with it is maybe an office component, right? A lot of people are doing hotel towers, right? Because travel is back. Everyone wants to go everywhere fun and post pictures of where they've been. So that's really, I think, the mixed use concept that's moving up. Okay?
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank
Yes.
you. This is Akshata this side. My question to you is that as you mentioned that starting a company, there's always a fear of failure. So you were new to Dallas. How did you manage to get your first few projects, given that you didn't have a lot of contacts over there?
No, so that's a great question. I didn't have a lot of contacts, right? So like I was mentioning, the first 6 months, I met a new person for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? So made some friends. I look back in like 2018, some were like amazing, genuine friends, right? There's always people who like talk, right? But they don't really come and help you, right? Does everyone have a friend like that? Right? They're like, oh my God, I know this person from here and this, and I'll help you with this. And then he never calls, right? So that's probably like 25% of people you meet. And then I've gotten really good now is that I can spot that person from a mile. I know when I go into a meeting, I'm like, oh, this is going to be or are we going to really have a connection? So by month 3, which was really cool, right? I didn't have projects then. It took me about 9 months to win my first project. At month 3, when I would meet people, they're like, hey, and I'm trying to do so and so, right? And I would look back at the person. One of the things I always did in that meeting is, how can I help you? And by month 3, I was actually able to help people back, which was amazing. And then karma, right? Life is a full circle. People that you help will always help you back, for the most part. And then you just be a little brave, a little bold, sometimes a bottle of wine. But now I just play tennis instead, right? If I have a bad day, I feel bad for the person across from me on the tennis court, right? And I smash their guts out. Mostly, no, not that much aggression, but somewhat. Last question. Okay. Go ahead, we'll take a couple more, right?
Yeah, Neha, great talk. Really loved your journey, your spirit. Great. My question is maybe a little bit personal, but all the time when you were describing your journey, I was thinking you have 2 kids, your daughters. So how did you manage and balance that, giving time to your kids and then being so aggressive in your work life also?
That's a really good question. So you guys, I have an amazing story, right? This is a hashtag epic fail parenting moment, right? So I don't think do any of y'all have kids? Okay, no. Not that you know of, right? Okay. So this is when I was building this hospital for Northside. It was in Atlanta, Georgia. Big hospital. We had just moved to Dallas. It was in 2017. And then I think I was telling y'all that I was traveling there weekly. So, I used to take my flight Monday night and then come back Wednesday night, right? I'm thinking I'm going to spend 2 days at my job site, spend a bunch of time and then come home. So at 6 o'clock, my Uber shows up at the door. And mind you, my girls are 2 and 5 at that time, okay? And then my 2-year-old gets really sad. She's like, Mama's going. So I was like, okay, what do I do, right? So I was like, okay, no, don't worry, I'm not going. Let's play hide and seek, okay? And then I tell her 1, 2, and she goes and hides, and then I go take an Uber. Oh, terrible, right? She will never play hide and seek, y'all. Never, right? So we had a talk, Arjun and I, and he's like, please don't do that again. That's rough, right? So when I used to come back on Thursday, the kids, you would get a little bit clingy. But then, we did a trip and we went to Atlanta and I was like, come on, let me show you what I'm building. And so pretty much from there, they started coming to all of my project sites. They couldn't come for the implosion because kids under 12 weren't allowed, but most other projects. So they've been a part of the journey. Sometimes if I had to work on a Saturday, they would come to the office with me. I remember this is a really good story, right? We had a big office. And Ria, my oldest, was 10 months old. And I'm trying to get some paperwork done. This is really bad. Okay, so I take some cornflakes. I start at the start of the office. There's carpet, and God knows, it's pretty bad, right? But I'm thinking maybe this will build immunity. And then I'll put little cornflakes, and it's 10,000 square feet. And then she's just crawling, and she's eating the cornflakes from the floor. And I was like, that gives me 20 minutes of email time, y'all. This is precious. This is amazing. And she's like, that's awesome. One of these times I told her, I said, go to that office and then call me from that phone to this phone, right? And then I was like, go to the next office and call me from that phone. So really my point is it's one big happy balance. And most days the balls are in the air. Some days the balls fall down. And then some days you hold it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wait, this is awesome. I don't want to give my mic back. Just kidding.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your invaluable insights with us. We kindly request all the dignitaries to make their way to the VIP lounge.
Students are instructed to be seated at their respective places and wait for their manual attendance.
To maintain the silence.